Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to focus on John chapter 5, verse 30, as we focus on our prayer journey and discovering God's will for our lives. John chapter 5 is packed full of stories. And because verse 30 is so short, I actually had to go back and understand the context of what was going on at the time. Even though verse 30 is so short, it's extremely profound, and it's very simple, actually. But just to note a few things, in John chapter 5, we see lots of stories such as Jesus healing an invalid man, Jesus claiming to be the Son of God, which gets religious leaders upset. They even call him blasphemous. We also see Jesus explain exactly how to follow him and how we can have and experience everlasting life. There's a lot to unpack, but let's focus on John 5, verse 30, which says, "I can do nothing on my own. I judge as God tells me. Therefore my judgment is just, because I carry out the will of the one who sent me, not my own will." In this verse, Jesus is telling the religious leaders of his obedience and likeness to God because he is carrying out the Father's work. In other words, Jesus is stating that his works, his love, his power over life and death, judgment, and his honor were identical to those of God. When you think about that, it's extremely profound. As I was reflecting on this verse, the simplicity of Jesus knowing exactly who he was in the Father and who God the Father called him to be, it was extremely simple, and it made me understand how I solicit the help of God when I'm making decisions. Another way I was able to relate it to my life is from a business standpoint, a simple life application. When I was faced with a problem or a strategic decision or a critical issue in the business, I would solicit the help of my CEO. Ultimately, I was trying to make sure that whatever decision I was to make, I would have the blessing and full support of my boss. Or more simply, if I had a leak or a repair that needed to take place at my house, I would call my father, who's packed full of practical wisdom as a contractor, but also I know that any obstacle that I could face, he's likely already faced. So I relate this back to Jesus following after and being obedient to God because he knew that God had the wisdom and discernment. And ultimately, if he called him to do something, he ought to do it. As I apply this verse to prayer, I think of it as an open invitation that God provides us to give us wisdom so that we may think like he thinks. As we face decisions throughout our days, that we would invite him in so he would direct our steps and guide us through obstacles, that he would show us his voice throughout our days and walk alongside us and walk us through the doors that only he can open, and that we would have enough wisdom and discernment to avoid the doors that are closed, that we would be diligent in him to live victoriously and bring honor in all that we do. So I really hope you enjoyed my take on John chapter 5, verse 30. I pray the Lord would bless you today and all days, and that as you draw closer to him in your prayer life, you would further understand his will for your life. God bless.